Hello, my name is Paul Tackett. I'm a surveillance officer for CNS in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, supporting EVMS compliance for our large cost reimbursed projects. I have been involved with 3 large project certification efforts, 2 with DoD and 1 most recently with DOE. The requirements for our fully compliant system, as documented in our system description, represent an evolution of lessons learned based upon the experience of our team under the leadership of DOE PM30. While my focus has been implementing requirements defined in our fully compliant EVMS, there has been growing interest to define a set of tailored EVMS concepts that would provide the best value for smaller projects. About a year ago, I started a team within FCOG to evaluate EVMS concepts that have the most value for smaller cost reimbursable projects, less than 50 million, and where full EVMS compliance is not required per DOE Order 413.3b. The goal of our FCOG group was to build on the foundation established by NDIA. While NDIA did a great job identifying the value and of adding EVMS concepts with their scalability guide, our approach was to examine many of the requirements that are typically part of a fully certified system. Then utilize that list of concepts, the rules and the tools, to identify those that may provide the best value. This guide provides a roadmap for a company to select concepts based upon size, complexity, or risk. Large DOE contractors often have a mix of large cost reimbursable projects with full EVMS requirements and smaller projects. Management is familiar with using EVMS and seeks consistency in project reporting, recognizing that mandating full EVMS requirements on smaller projects is expensive and may not be necessary. The team assembled virtually over 9 months to identify, review, and grade each concept organized by EVMS process area. As mentioned on the last slide, our goal was not to replace the educational value of the NDIA guide. Our approach was to start with the prerequisite that the reader understands requirements typically associated with a fully certified system within DOE. By not repeating content, we spent more time with each of the EVMS concepts. Shown here are the steps the team followed. We completed our review of the white paper in October, and it is, or will be shortly, posted to the FCOG website. Our team listed common requirements, but also less common requirements, such as the use of 0 budgeted activities within the schedule, or defining the use of quantifiable backup data for activities over 44 days duration. These less common requirements often provide incremental value, but may also carry implementation and maintenance costs. The team assessed all these concepts individually, utilizing a rating between 1 and 5 for 3 types of projects. These types of projects were those less than 10 million with low consequence. These projects consider a minimum threshold. While a low-end dollar value was never determined, most projects where these tools made sense would be at the higher end of this range. Projects between 10 and 50 million with low risk. These projects typically have an intermediate rating of the concept applicability. This group is where execution risk and potential impact of performance issues are lower compared to other projects of similar size. Projects between 10 and 50 million with higher risk. These typically rank the highest for the concept application, which made sense because we are approaching the limit where full EVMS is required. While completing this rating process, high-value concepts were flagged as key, indicating the concept is in a group that were foundational and should be considered in some form regardless of project size or risk. Concepts that have a mixed value were tagged with tailorable. These are areas with the most potential for adjustment or deletion. In each case, the concept includes a discussion of the rating and suggestions for tailoring. Concept scores create the ranking intended to guide tool selection. A score of 1 at the bottom of the page indicates minimal value. It's worth noting that none of the concepts ranked a 1. We did have several that ranked 2, mostly on projects less than 10 million. While these should be considered, most have a significant chance of being trimmed or eliminated based upon complexity or expense. Many tailorable concepts ranked a 3, indicating these should be strongly considered in some fashion. Concepts ranking a 4 are often foundational or key. These should be included. However, significant adjustment may still be warranted. For example, having a WBS dictionary that defines scope and organization is foundational and should be included. Maintenance of the WBSD for changes may not add enough value if the scope is well documented and adequately reflected in the baseline schedule. For smaller, shorter projects, the rigor of maintaining the WBSD may be a duplication of effort and thus be a candidate for removal. Note that removal of the WBSD is only warranted if the objective can be satisfied in another way. Concepts ranked a 5 are normally foundational, especially if as a 5 for all size projects. A rating of 5 does not, however, indicate the same level of rigor that would be applied in a fully compliant system. An example of this is change control. All projects are encouraged to have documented baseline change control. Change package content and approval authority may be tailored. The white paper on the FCOG site includes an introduction and description of the process. It also includes a discussion of key and tailorable concepts, as well as the full matrix of concepts used in the evaluation process. This is a sample of the matrix from the paper. The matrix is organized by process group with key concepts listed first, followed by tailorable ones. Looking at the organization process group on this page, there are 3 key requirements with a score of 5 for all project sizes. Note that even for a key concept, tailoring may be warranted for efficiency. This is explained in the comments section. We rated over 50 concepts in this matrix, and there are more, oh yes. This was our attempt to pick items most likely to add value. These foundational concepts should look familiar to most EVMS practitioners. Organizing scope by WBS, utilizing a project schedule, and requiring work authorization bubble up as foundational. Having meaningful earned value and associating actual costs of work performed is also foundational, as no EVMS will work without a structure that allows comparison of BCWS, BCWP, and ACWP. Note that adequate rigor is needed. Some advanced concepts, like estimated actuals, for costs not reflected by the accounting system, should be considered only if the accounting system cannot provide the ACWP to an acceptable level of accuracy for the period reviewed. One of the most valued benefits of a well-run EVMS is the ability to have a meaningful estimate at completion. All projects, regardless of size, must consider performance to date, as well as identified trends and risks in their EAC. The EAC should always be actuals to date, plus an estimate to complete on known scope. Comparing the cumulative CPI with the TCPI for the remaining scope is a high-value metric used to assess the reasonableness of the EAC. Maintaining a clear understanding of authorized scope is essential to project management. While the process rigor may vary, documenting changes to the baseline with a set of documented rules is a foundational concept for all projects and enables meaningful analysis of performance. The last foundational concept identified may seem out of place, but any defined set of management tools based upon EVMS concepts must include a process to educate the team. In addition, periodic evaluation of compliance to the defined system is useful to ensure consistency with identified gaps that may impact the quality of the output. While this is a typical requirement for a fully compliant EVMS, a streamlined version of this guidance and governance role remains value-added, even for smaller projects. Okay, we just discussed foundational concepts. Now we will explore the rules and tools that have the most opportunity for tailoring. Organizing. Our recommendations regarding simplifying the WBS or use of the WBSD align pretty closely with the NDIA guide. Planning, scheduling, and budgeting. This is where we really expand on the foundation in the NDIA guide. How about creative options for time phasing budget or logic rules where the PM can customize the schedule, like the use of zero budgeted activities? We introduced several options to load budget on longer duration activities as long as the budget is loaded in a way that models the expected execution. For budgeting and work authorization on small projects, the PM may function as the single CAM, recognizing the PM may have less control of the resources, relying on a matrix organization. Even allowing the entire project to be a single control account is often an option. Normally, rules would prohibit significant mixing of LOE and discrete at the control account level. If warranted, based on the project size and the ability to analyze contributors at the work package level, this may be an adequate solution to simplify reporting. Work authorization remains foundational, but may be implemented more simply using a single page that defines control account scope, schedule, and budget. For fully compliant systems, there is significant rigor for the definition of earned value techniques. Any system, even tailored, must provide meaningful earned value. Targeted reduction of these requirements has merit if the objective measurement can be achieved. For accounting, our recommendations are similar to NDIA. Note that a fully compliant EVMS typically uses a separate cost processor to achieve alignment between scope, schedule, budget, and implement changes. A foundational concept is to have ACWP properly associated with BCWP. Creating a manual process and threshold for use of estimated actuals is a minimum recommendation to achieve this alignment. Mapping accounting details into simple elements of cost, such as labor, non-labor, may suffice. Our recommendations for analysis and management reporting focus on crisp variance analysis and generating a meaningful EAC. Variance analysis is often a weakness in a certified system. Defining expectations through training and use of a checklist is a path for both a fully compliant system and a tailored approach. The only difference is the level of rigor. Deleting the EVMS action tracking process may be more efficient if the project has an existing system. The process used to analyze performance and predict the future is largely the same. Because smaller projects are typically shorter, annual EACs are typically not required. Change control for a fully compliant system has evolved into a complex set of rules intended to encourage forward planning and police potential abuse of MR. For smaller projects, basic procedures and training are still required. But approval of replanning or use of MR may be administratively done internally with added flexibility based on project objectives. An example of this are the freeze period rules intended to foster stability of the near-term baseline. If variance analysis thresholds are applied only for cumulative variances, the need for freeze period restrictions is less important. If rules can be defined that enable meaningful variances, there's room to simplify the process. When managing materials and subcontracts, fully compliant systems within DOE utilize the concept of high dollar value for those subcontracted efforts requiring alignment and added visibility. The concept of retaining this visibility is foundational. The method to achieve it can be customized based upon where there is project risk. Assessing scope, schedule, and programmatic risk is a requirement for all projects. This process will define management reserve and schedule reserve needed to achieve project objectives. Normally, the process used to determine these values are specialized and complicated. Alternate approaches, like an educated management assessment, may be adequate. Examining the suite of concepts and tools typically required for a fully compliant EVMS results in determining that most concepts have at least some value for small projects. When examining both the foundational and tailorable concepts, none of the 32 EVMS guidelines were abandoned. The combination of foundational and tailorable concepts still support the basic intent of the 32 guidelines. Most of the concepts that are candidates for tailoring relax the rigor or simplify the structure. Take Guideline 9, for example, that states, establish budgets for authorized work with identification of significant cost elements, labor, material, etc., as needed for internal management and for control of subcontractors. Tailoring EOCs to include only labor and non-labor may be adequate to manage the project. The team had discussions about defining additional categories of project size and risk. Ultimately, we kept with the original 3 selected. Larger projects near the top of the range started to look very similar to what would be expected with a fully compliant system. It is also clear that very small projects, well below the lowest $10 million threshold, have substantially more opportunities to tailor. The decision on tools for any EVMS reminds us of the language found in EIA 748 that states, first and foremost, the system must meet the organization's needs and good business practices. Keeping this principle in mind, the concepts and tools documented for use must align with existing systems and satisfy both the company and the customer. The role of EVMS oversight, which is integral to a fully compliant DOE EVMS, continues to play a role with a tailored system. Assessment of skills and education of the team on basic EVMS objectives and mechanics will foster confidence in the process and ultimately improve management decisions. Questions for this presentation and others related to EVMS tailoring will be addressed in the live panel discussion. Thank you.